Good evening. Hope you're all doing well. We are going to be learning tonight Maseches Gittin above, and we're starting at the very bottom line of Pehem Beis. Yesterday we learned the Machlokes and the Tanoim in regards to whether or not an ambiguous language, a slightly ambiguous language, is enough to create for a proper get. The Tanna Kama was of the opinion that just by saying that a woman is able to marry another man, that the get is considered proper. So he never said you're here by force. But Yehuda quoted here at the very top of Pehem Beis that a very explicit and detailed language in regards to how to effect a get, how to bring a get into reality. And we're in the midst of analyzing that language. So it says Miyoma Dinan, that on the very bottom line, it says Miyoma Dinan, from this day. And why did we have to say that? Why did we include that in the language? The Gemara says, "Who came at Rabbi Yossi? This is coming to preclude the sheet of Rabbi Yossi." What was the sheet of Rabbi Yossi? Rabbi Yossi says the Omar, he was of the opinion. We've seen the sheet elsewhere that the date on the get is enough to be machriya, even if there isn't any otherwise explicit language, and therefore we had to exclude this language. That's why Rabbi Yossi was of the opinion that it had to say Yom. Then the Gemara says, "Why did we have to have the language of Allah?" So says the Gemara, because we had to preclude another possibility, and that was the Shita of Rafuke, because as we saw a number of days ago, there was a particular scenario brought up between Rav and Rav Nachman, and we had to preclude what was that case. If someone were to divorce his wife for a day, we're precluding that possible understanding. And Gufo shall get shiur hare ad bas chorin hare ad smich. In regards to a get chorin, there was this language that a person could say that you are, as the Gemara quotes here in the two dots, pay Vav and Aleph, 3 lines down, Hare at Baschorin, you're here by a Baschorin, or Hare Ad La'azmech, you can be on your own. And here the Gemara says there was even more explicit language because Rabbi Yehuda didn't agree with the Tanna Kama. The Gemara says, Iskin Rabbi Yehuda says, Bishtar Zvini da Abdi, when they're selling an Evet to another person, Abda the non-mutstach Abdo, this Evet that's in discussion will definitely be an evet for you. They are exempt and they are removed from freedom. And from any claims against them. They also have no ties against them, a king or from a queen, namely from the local government. The Russian, the Inish lo Yisalayu, and there's also no impressions and no commitments from another person, meaning he's exclusively going to be your evet. They have no blemishes, and from boils, the nafik ad titzar, that might happen between now over the next 2 years. Either new ones, either old ones, either new ones or old ones. And in regards to these boils, the Gemara takes a quick tangent, reminiscent of the Gemaras that we saw a couple of weeks ago. And says the Gemara minus to say, what's the way to heal these particular boils? The Gemara says, you should take ginger, so you should take some type of silver, and you should take sulfur, vinegar from wine, and some type of ointment or salve from oils, and you should also take some type of white naphtha, and you should spread it on the body with the feather of a goose, something along those lines, a white feather of a goose. Okay. Back to our Gemara, the Mishnah opens a quarter of the way down, a fifth of the way down, and the Gemara says, Shlosha Gittin Psulim V'Nisei Savlad Kasha. The Mishnah says there are 3 Gittin that are really passing. But if in fact somebody gets married, the child won't be a matzah, the child will be kosher. The Gemara enumerates those 3 cases. If I were to write it in my own handwriting, but there's no witnesses, that's kosher, but the kid would not be a matzah if she remarried based on that. I should say better. The get's possible, but if she remarried based off of that, the child from the new marriage is not a matzah. The second case is Yeshala. Yes, there are Eidim, but there's no date. There is a date, but there's only one signature. And then the Gemara repeats as it started. We're going to pick up in the Gemara why did the Mishnah have to detail 2 different languages that sound seemingly identical. Rabbi Elazar, this is not Rabbi Eliezer, and we'll soon see a Gemara that we quoted earlier in the Maseches. So Rabbi Elazar Omer, even if Eidim were not written down at all, but there were Eidim present when the get was given from the Baal to the Isha, so says the Gemara, that's kosher. And not only that, it's really kosher. How do we know it's really kosher? Because we're even allowed to collect from properties that have liens on them, which is a higher level higher standard. Because really, the only reason why people sign on a get is because of tikkun olam. Therefore, the dina, it's really technically considered to be a will. The Gemara says, we've only identified these three cases. I can give you a whole handful of cases. Says the Gemara. I think the Gemara is going to bring three cases right now. But we should be under the assumption that it's no different than the cases in our Mishnah, in that the get really should be possible. But if a woman were to remarry based on this get, the children would be sharing and not mamzer. You could get yashim. We spoke about the case of get yashim a number of days ago. That's if a husband and a wife are discussing a divorce. They decide that they're going to get a divorce. He writes the get, and then they're in yichud together before the get was given. In such a case, that's a very similar halacha. It should be the halacha is like our Mishnah, that really the get's possible. But being says mamzer, says the Gemara hasam lo teitze hacha teitze. Over there in the case of get yashim, they're not forced to get divorced. But hacha in our case, the husband does need to get divorced from his wife in these three cases. That's a little bit unique because we really haven't seen that in our Mishnah yet. All of our Mishnah says is that these Gittin are psulim, but if you do marry the kid as a mamzer, we don't know about teitze. So this actually is a machlokas on the next page as to whether or not our Mishnah says teitzeh. And based on the next page, the Gemara says, okay, I understand your distinction of lo teitzeh in the case of get yasham and teitzeh over here in our Mishnah. But the problem is that our Mishnah is not in agreement with everyone. I understand what you're saying according to those who hold that in our Mishnah they should be teitzeh. But according to those who say hacha lo teitzeh, that in our case, really they should not be forced to divorce the three cases in our Mishnah. So then all the cases seem very similar. Then get yashim really should match because get yashim checks off all the boxes. It should be that it's possible and that but if you do get married, which you should not do, okay, then you can stay together and it should be that really it's teitzeh. It should be that it's lo teitzeh in both cases. Says the Gemara, Hasam over there by the get yashim tilasei and the Gemara gets out of it by saying that over there by the case of the get yashim, she can get married lechatchila. Over here it's not true. Over here we'll definitely be together. And halfway down, the Gemara says, wait, there's really another case that should be included in our Mishnah's list of three. And that's a case of you can get kereach. As we discussed a couple of days ago, a get kereach is a get that's folded and stitched and signed on each fold. This was done in regards to Kohanim who were kaptan. We didn't want Kohen to be quick to give a get to his wife, so we made the get more complicated. So why isn't that case brought over here after all? There too, we should have said that the get is possible. Why wasn't that added over here? The Gemara says because Hasam, as you may recall over there, the extremely strong Shita of Rameir, Hasam have blood mamzer and Hacha blood kosher. Over there, we said that the kids are mamzer. In our Mishnah, we definitely said that the kids are kosher. Says the Gemara that it's a cheap shot because we know that not that Rav Meir is not the only Shita over there. Says the Gemara, Hanicha that Rav Meir, we're going to include the parentheses over here. I understand, according to Rav Meir, that in the case of get kereach, that the children born based off of that get are going to be considered to be mamzer. But the Chachamim don't hold that way. So says the Gemara, what then is the difference as to why it is that a get kereach should not be included in our Mishnah, while the other three are included in the Mishnah? The Gemara says, no, in that case, over there in the get kereach, they should get divorced, and over here they should not get divorced. So the Gemara pushes back. After all, we know that there's a machlokas about our case of our Mishnah. You're right. You're 100% correct that there would be a difference between get kereach and the three cases of our Mishnah if we say that our Mishnah is lo teitze. But according to the Shita that holds that in our Mishnah it is teitze, then really the case of get kereach fits perfectly into our Mishnah. So therefore, why would it not be included? It says the Gemara b'makushar lo kamari 2/3 of the way down Pivav and Aleph. When we're talking about a get makushar, that's really not a normal get. It's really only for Kohan. May vary under the rarest of circumstances. You have to be a Kohen to be getting divorced. It's not such a simple scenario, and therefore it's uncommon, and therefore not part of our Mishnah. But you're right. Conceptually, it's true. It's just that the get kereach is very different than the get in our Mishnah. The Gemara continues with one more example. We spoke about this example of Shlo Malchus, that a person has to write a date based on the local government. Remember, we discussed it can't be Rome, it can't be Madai Paras. So that case also should be like our Mishnah. Why was that excluded from our Mishnah? It should have the same guidelines in that it's possible, but being he says blood kosher. Says the Gemara Hasan Teitze over there in the case of a get where the get is not based on the date of the Shlo Malchus. Over there, halacha should be Teitze and Hacha lo Teitze. that over there they have to get divorced, and over here they don't have to get divorced. So the Gemara pushes back yet again, same approach, and says, I don't understand. I understand according to those who say that our case is lo teitze. But once we have a shita out there that says that our mission is talking about teitze, then it should be no different than a case of shlam malchus. Says the Gemara, blood kosher. Over there, in that case, the child is going to be a mamzer. That doesn't match the parameters of our mission. It doesn't belong in our mission because of this. Says the Gemara, that's only true according to some people. Who holds that there's mamzeros, according to the rabbis who don't hold that there's mamzeros, then how would we understand? Says the Gemara, really, we're looking at that case like Rav Meir, and there is mamzeros. Blood kasher, we pass on like Rav Meir in that case, and therefore the case of shlam malchus doesn't really fit into our mission. All of that is the first part of the Gemara, and now what we're going to do is analyze why it is that the Gemara spoke with the same exact language, the very opening language of our Mishnah, Shlosha Gittin Blood Kosher. And the Mishnah presents the three cases, and then 5 lines into the Mishnah it says, Shlosha Gittin Blood Kosher. So says the Gemara, 4/5 of the way down, it says the Gemara, when we said there are 3 cases in the beginning of the Mishnah, the opening line of the Mishnah, what were we excluding? And the Minyan of the Sefer, when we say that these 3 are not kosher in the Sefer, what were we excluding them? So the Gemara responds, Minyan of the Resha, in regards to the cases that are excluded when it says the number 3, that's in the Utehan to Amr. Those are all the cases that we started with. That was the case of Get Yoshan, that was the case of Get Kerech, and that was the case of Shlam Malchus. Minyan of the Sefer, what about the second time that our Mishnah says these 3 Gittin are not kosher, but the Teitze Blood kosher? So to this, the Gemara says, Minyan of the Sefer L'Me'utei Hadatime. It's your excluded price. What does the price say? I maybe get me making a say, yeah. If a person brings a get from outside of the country, from France to Yerushalayim, that if the get was given over, and a person did not say that if that were to be the case, Yotzi v'havlad mamzer tivi Rav Meir. The Meir was of the opinion that that child will be a mamzer. The Chachamim will remain havlad mamzer. Chachamim say, no, the child would not be a mamzer without the words v'fanei nechtam. But nevertheless, what should happen? Okay, so Yasa, 6 lines from the bottom. What he should do is he should take the get back and repeat. And we didn't want that case, even according to the Chachamim, we didn't want that case in our Mishnah. We left it in. The Gemara picks up with one of the 3 cases and says, one of the cases where a person wrote the get in his own handwriting and there were no Eidim. So then there was a cryptic line by Rav, Omar Rav, we're talking about his own handwriting. It's true. We are talking about his own handwriting. So the Gemara therefore has to analyze, where was he talking about? Ahayo, which case was he talking about? Ilima Aresha, if you want to say it's in the first case of our Mishnah, which is where explicitly, if you look back in the Mishnah, it's on the second line in the Mishnah where it says Kasav Chsav Yado. That's Pasha, Kasav Chsav Yado Katan. The Ella perhaps is talking about a mitziyasa. If you're saying that it's talking about the second case, which was the case of Yeshel of Eidim ve'ein b'ozman, that can't be either because Harei Yeshel of Eidim, the Eidim can solve for that problem. Ella on the last line of Pei Vav Amud Aleph, the Gemara says, Sefer, we must be talking about the Sefer. And the case of the Sefer was Yesh b'ozman ve'ein bo ela eid echad, and there we don't know who authored it. So there, in such a case, right? Ella Sefer Yesh b'ozman ve'ein bo ela eid echad. That's what we're talking about, where the Baal wrote down. And so the Gemara on the top of on the base, and we're going down to the Mishnah with a lot of ground to cover. I have to go board by flight in 10 minutes. So we will be moving rapidly through this page. It says the Gemara, the Daf Yomi the other way. That's only true that the halacha would be this way, meaning that it would be puzzle to get. It really should be a puzzle get, but being Teitze of Blood kosher, that's only true if it's his handwriting and a witness about Kasav Sofer ve'ed lo. If a different person were to have written, it would not be the case. And here, according to the Rishonim, the child would be a mamzer. Shmuel Amar, I disagree. I feel the Kasav Sofer ve'ed she'arei shaninu Kasav Sofer ve'ed kosher. He disagrees. The initial presentation of the Gemara on the top of the base, on the top line, was where we said that if the Sofer and Eid wrote it, the child would be a mamzer. Here, Shmuel disagrees and says, no, it would still be kosher. But Rav, what would Rav say in such a case about the sofer? Midami, how can you compare them? In one case, we have a scenario where you can get married to and the cases are not comparable at all. Shmuel says, lo kasha. It depends what kind of sofer we're talking about. The Safer the Mufak only makes moves with the permission of the Baal, and the Safer the Mufak is not such an expert sofer who doesn't know what he's talking about. He makes moves even without the Baal. Says the Gemara, Amar le Rabbi Elazar, what are you talking about? How can you say that it would be the case that halacha should be that way? After all, there's Eidim. Amar le, perhaps we should say that this particular line of Harei Yeshal of Eidim is talking about the Sefer. It says the Gemara, Zimnon Amar Rav Teitze, and Zimnon Amar Rav Lo Teitze. Sometimes he says they need to get divorced, and sometimes he says they don't need to get divorced on Ketzad. Yesh Labanim Lo Teitze, that if there are children, then they should not get divorced. Ein Labanim Teitze. The Gemara asks from a case in Maseches Yevamos that we learned many months ago, and the Gemara and you've almost asked a question as follows. First of the long line, the Gemara says, "Masi Marzutra Bartuvia, B'chulan Shayba and Safek Kedushin and Safek Gerushin Harei Luchaltzos V'Lo Misiavos." When there is a woman who has a Safek Kedushin or a Safek Gerushin, so because the first wife, this woman can't marry based on the Safek Gerushin Safek Kedushin, therefore the co-wife gets to go free. So let's paint the picture of two wives with Chana and Penina. If Chana is not able to do Yibum because there's a Safek Kiddushin, then Penina gets to go scot-free, no problem. Says the Gemara, Ketzad Safek Kiddushin. What's the case of a sample where there's a Safek Kiddushin? The Gemara says a feigned case, we learned it already. Zorak La Kiddushin Safek Karav Lo Safek Karav Lo Zeo Safek Kiddushin. And if there was a get that was thrown to her, that was in the appropriate place, generally speaking, but we don't know who it was closer to, that's a Safek. What's a Safek Gerushin? This is important for our case. Those are the cases of our Mishnah. All of those cases are considered to be a Safek Gerushin. And again, if there's a Safek Gerushin, the Chana to the Yavam, then Penina goes without chalitza, and says the Gemara, wait 1 second. If you're going to say that just because she has children lo teitze, so then that's a problem. Because if it's lo teitze, really she should have been teitze, but because of the kids she was not teitze. So then we have a problem because tzarasa asa liyavume. Really, fundamentally, teitze she should have gotten divorced, which would have then required the tzara Chana to get chalitza or yibum. Says the Gemara, don't worry. If that happens, Chachamim said that if the child was already born in this marriage, the marriage that's b'diavad, we should leave them married to one another. And even though it's true that there should have been chalitza or yibum, we can't be halachically concerned about that. It's a very unlikely case scenario, and it's only a chashash derabban. Really, there should be no divorcing. No divorcing. Whether or not there's children. Rabbi Chalafta de Minhuna. This is what your father said. There's another halacha, it's a side halacha that was taught in the same breath that Rabbi Yochanan had taught to the children of Rabbi Chalafta de Minhuna. He also said, we know that if an animal drinks out of the mechatas, that the mechatas is going to be possible. Why is that? Because they probably backwashed a little bit and they added something to it and it's not acceptable. So the Gemara says, that is the din. If this kratis drinks out the mechatas, it's not absorbed by kratis. What is this type of bug? What type of bird? So the Gemara, Amar Abaye, the adapter the beni keeping. It's some type of bug that was common around bundles of wheat. Says the Gemara, Masiv Rav Daniel, Barav Katina, Kola Ofos, Postum Bemechatas, Chutz Min Hayon, Nation Consensus. All of the birds that drink out of Mechatas ruin it with one exception, and that is the Yona. The Yona drinks in such a way where there's no dribbling afterwards of the water by the Emisa. And if that's true, why is it that the Brisa doesn't include both the Kratzis and the Yona? Why is there only the Yona? Says the Gemara, because the kratis, the animal, this animal, it really depends. Sometimes the animal, when it's When it's very big, you got a little pasla. But uktana pasla, when it's bigger, it drinks the right way. When it's smaller, it drinks the wrong way. So not every type of grutz. There's only certain types of grutz that are considered acceptable when they drink out of the mechates. They had kama. What's the appropriate size? I'm Rabbi Kizayas. That's the physical size of Kizayas, very small. Says the Gemara, just about halfway down, Rabbi Lazar Omar Afal Pi. Let's look back and see what Rabbi Lazar was saying. Rabbi Lazar was of the opinion in our Mishnah. He says that Afal Pi She'enel Abedim Halashim Nasim Abifni Edim. We don't need the signatures. It's kosher. You can even collect from the Chasim Mishubadim because the whole point of the signatures is movement. So to this, the Gemara says about halfway down. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Marav Halacha Rabbi Lazar, but Gittin we pass on like Rabbi Lazar when it comes to Gittin, and therefore the get would be kosher. Gemara then says, "Ki amisa kami d'shmuel amar after shtaros." This was not only true the halacha; it's true. And Rabbi Lazar says that the signatures are just for tikkun, but it's also true by shtaros. So it says the Gemara, "Rav sabar b'shtaros." Rav didn't hold this way. How can you say that Rav wouldn't hold it? It's after a long time. We know that it's a very strong case that you can collect from the chasim mishabadim. Rabbi Lazar Tarti Amar Rav sabar sabar kavasi b'chalim palag lebechad. Rabbi Lazar was saying two different things. One about regular shtaros, one about getting Rav agrees in regards to Gittin, but he doesn't agree in regards to the shtaros. It says the Gemara b'chein Amar Rabbi Yaakov Bar Idam Rabbi Shulchan Levi halacha Rabbi Lazar b'Gittin. We follow like Rabbi Lazar that the signatures and the tikkun. But Rabbi Yana and the reach haget, but Imbo he says I completely disagree. If there are no signatures, there isn't even a reach of a get. It's a zero. The get doesn't count at all. How can you say that? Rabbi Yana last I do Rabbi Lazar. How can you say that? Gemara responds, no, he's not talking about that. Lachi kamar the Rabbanon if you a reach haget and it's machlokas Rabbi Lazar and the Chachamim. And he says the Chachamim hold against Rabbi Lazar that there's nothing to talk about. V'chein Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina Amar Reish Lakish halachik Rabbi Lazar v'Gittin. We pass on Rabbi Lazar Gittin. Rabbi Yochanan Rabbi Reach haget. Inbo the same machlokas between the two. How can when the Gemara says 2/3 of the way down when Rabbi Yochanan that's the idea of Rabbi Lazar? Could it be that Rabbi Yochanan disagrees with Rabbi Lazar? Says the Gemara Hachi Kamar the Rabban with the Reach haget. So there's party lines between the Tanaim and the Amoraim. Some hold that the Gittin without signatures of Eidim are fine because it's only because of Tikkun Olam, and some hold that it's a big help. So then the Gemara says, Shalach le Rabbi Abba bar Zabda Lamari Barman. Why may Rabbi Halacha Rabbi Lazar begin? No, in Halacha, we pass him like Rabbi Lazar, yes or no. So says the Gemara, that's what they wanted to ask from Rabbi, but before they got the answer, Adhachi nach nafshe the Rabbi had just passed away. Amar le Rabba Barei Rabba, his son said, Achi Amar Abba Mishmei the Rabba. The father Rabbi said unto him, Rabba Halacha Rabbi Lazar be Gittin. There's another very unique language that the rabbis who were experts in halacha held this way. Because the previous generation of Gedolim had said the same thing. That the language was a little different. The rabbis who are friends, who are experts in halacha, did tell me the children of Rabbeinu, the Talmidim of Rabbeinu, after all, the Amar of Chiza, Amar of Chama Bar Amar seems to be there's a fairly strong consensus. And lastly, B'chein Ki Asa Rafin Amar Rabbi Lazar Amar Halacha Rabbi Lazar. But not everybody holds this way, but it does seem like a lot of people hold this way. But if in fact it were to be the case, that a get was written without Eidim, but given in front of Eidim, and our Mishnah says, like Rabbi Lazar, that would be kosher. So that's the thing with Rabbi Lazar, and most people seem to hold that way. We'll stop right here and pick up in the session tomorrow morning with a shiur after the 7:15 shachars, after the early shachars, after the 6:30 shachars. Wishing you all.